What is the threat of New World screwworm? And what animals does it actually threaten?
Healthy animals don't get parasites and they don't get pathology.
Hmm.
And that health we call it an abbreviation, of the immune system, but it goes into the energetics of the animal.
And how does our management impact the threat that is New World screwworm?
They might have a well thought out amount and variety of minerals, but to compete on price, they get the individual minerals out of China. And almost every mineral coming out of China or India now has cadmium in it. And the first thing cadmium does is screws up the cow's ability to regulate internal body temperature. They're too hot in the summer to rebreed, too cold in the winter and require more feed. If you've got cows that have a cadmium hump from the shoulder blades back to the hook bones, that's a classic cadmium toxicity look. If you see a herd that has that cadmium hump, they are ripe for the screwworm to come because they have a comorbidity. They're too hot. They're going to attract external, internal parasites.
All that and more on this episode 528 of the Working Cows podcast, brought to you by Dominium Wealth, 100th Meridian Ranching, Ranch Right, and Austin Hart at Red Summit Advisors.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. It's Clay Connery, host of the Working Cows podcast. Very excited to welcome back to the podcast for the first time together, I believe, Will Winter and Steve Campbell. And we're going to talk to them about the threat of New World screwworm. What do our genetics have to do with it? What do the genetics of our cattle have to do with it? What does our management have to do with it? Where is it actually a threat? And what kind of animals and what animals are most impacted by the threat of New World screwworm. So here's my conversation with Steve Campbell and Will Winter. Steve, Will, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows podcast. Welcome back.
Thank you, Clay. It's good to see your face and hear your voice.
Absolutely. Always appreciate talking to you and Will, and a lot of good things typically come out of these meetings.
Yeah, likewise, looking forward to the conversation. And I live in Mud Butte, South Dakota, so it's always good to be seen.
Yeah. I've got my little buddy here with me today.
Yeah.
This is Pedro. He's my guardian dog.
Right. It's good help, looks like. Steve's driven 15 miles north of my house. Maybe, Will, you have too. So he knows the country I live in, and he knows that coming from where I come from, it's good to be seen, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I had a request from a guy, reached out to me and said, hey, I'd like to hear some about New World screwworm. And of course, we've all heard it's encroachment, continuing to advance, it seems. And I guess maybe we could start with a little bit of the history. And this is not a judgment on either of you gentlemen, but do you remember when New World screwworm was an issue last time or previously in this country?
I actually do. I actually worked on screwworm victim animals in the 60s. I had a degree in livestock in 1968. It was called animal husbandry at the day. They don't call it that anymore, which tells you a lot. It's called animal science now. Can you feel the difference between that? Animal husbandry being a much better word for what we're doing. Not that we're anti-science, but it's just like husbandry includes that. But yeah, I had kind of this is kind of a good news, bad news deal. My first job as a baby vet was in Missouri, and I got all hipped up on being a horse vet when I was in vet school. I didn't start out that way, but I started gravitating to it. And I am not a horseman to be riding them. I'm a horseman where I had a good feel, and it was actually I was a little too cocky for my own good. That's very dangerous with horses. Respect is very important in not being too big for your britches, and they put me in my place a couple times. Actually, I had a couple two near-death experiences that changed my life tremendously. I didn't get killed, but it was a kind of accident where I could have been a vegetable, dead, or a quadriplegic. And it really taught me a lot about horses. But in the process, being a baby vet, nobody let you work on an expensive horse. So I did a lot of cattle. And in the area of Missouri I was perfect area for screwworm infestation because it was a hillbilly area, poverty area, and I saw so many bad things with broke farmers who were using not good old fashioned, bad old fashioned minimalism. The animals were poorly nourished, not getting enough even feed, but also certainly no vitamins or minerals. There's your basic animal that's going to be prone to parasites.
Hmm.
So I got lots of experience with wound treatment. Also, there's a lot of brush and sticker bushes in Missouri. It's a brushy country. And those kind of brush wounds, barbed wire was everywhere, everywhere. Those kind of wounds make them vulnerable to screwworm. And then also, I said there's three kinds of farms. The only ranchers that need to worry about screwworm. One is the guy that doesn't listen to Steve Campbell, and they have miserable genetics, inbred, maybe sale barn cattle that don't have good, strong genetics. The other is the farmer that said, "Oh, I can't afford them stinking minerals; they're too expensive," which isn't true at all. But they don't mineralize their cattle, which means that they're going to be vulnerable. And then the third type of farm that's vulnerable would be farmers that spend most of their day at the coffee shop or the cafe, but with their neighbors about how much further they're going to have to dig their well down this year. So they don't pay attention to their cattle because you got to be on it. If you don't get on these wounds, it is a problem. And by the way, the area I was working in Missouri, they wanted pulled cattle, but they did not breed or buy pulled cattle. So I did something that I had to do. Being a worker bee, I didn't own the practice. I didn't get to choose what we did, so I did a lot of dehorning. And that's probably the most vulnerable area for screwworms is dehorning cattle. It's an awful job. I haven't done it in 3 or 4 decades. I'll never do another dehorning.
Let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor today, Dominium Wealth.
Hey, it's Nick Costco of Dominium-Wealth.com. Did you hear me on episode 490 talking about how the infinite banking concept empowers you to take control of your money? Are you curious how your fellow ranchers are capitalizing on this concept? Did it leave you with some questions? You can get those questions answered at the Western Sustainability Exchange's Expanded Markets Conference, September 13th through the 15th in Columbus, Montana. I will be doing a breakout session there where we can dive into your questions. For more information on this event, check the show notes or visit westernsustainabilityexchange.org.
Like I say, if you want pulled cattle, get pulled cattle. It's a cruel, brutal, miserable surgery, and I do not recommend it. I still castrate animals. And that's the second most likely place, maybe the second or third most likely place to have a parasite infection of maggots, either screwworm maggots or just maggots. And then the third one is newborn calves on their navel. That's the other, maybe the most common area for entryway for any kind of maggot. The maggots don't look alike. The screwworm maggots have some barbs on them, and they actually kind of screw themselves in, hence the name. New World just means that it's moved up above the equator, and that we have it in a lot of Central American countries and Mexico. And like I say, I still vividly remember seeing pretty hideous wounds from it. It's no wonder it has such a nightmarish reputation. Like when Jaws came out, and everybody now hates sharks. Well, when people read about screwworm or see photographs of the damage, it puts the fear in people's hearts. And that's the other thing Steve and I were talking about the other day is a little bit of fear is actually a good thing in livestock management. It keeps you on your toes. But fear does another thing, and it causes people to do drastic things that are in some cases worse than the potential problem. So fear sells drugs, fear sells medicine. And so people are willing to use nuclear weapons to solve conventional problems. And that was the case in England. I work with some English vets, and I'll shut up here in a minute, Steve, but these English vets, to eradicate screwworms over in Europe, they used Fosmet, which is an organic phosphate insecticide that's a pour-on. And what they were doing is pouring Fosmet down, where you put pour-ons, you put it right down the back. Well, what's underneath the back, just a half an inch away? The spinal cord. Organophosphates work as a neurotoxin, and they actually cause the nervous system of parasites to go into extreme paralysis, and they die because insects have a more sensitive nervous system than mammals do. So just before it kills you, it kills the parasite. Well, when they put this on, they did what all farmers do. Apparently, European and British farmers are no different than American farmers. If a little's good, a lot is better. So they put it on as a double application. Twice the recommended amount was typically used. And what they ended up doing, and this is a complicated story maybe for another topic, but they actually set the stage for BSE, which is another word for mad cow disease. We don't call it mad cow, but bovine encephalopathy is a little too much of a mouthful for the press. And that, I like to say, set the stage. It takes a trigger, but once you have damaged the nervous system with organophosphates, then there are certain things, one of which is the sonic boom from the Concorde jet, which flew from Paris to London, and all the way along that route where the sonic boom was happening, it was triggering BSE. And Steve and I know British farmers who had their entire dairy herds exterminated because their neighbors had tested positive for BSE. So here it is. It was a screwworm thing that ended up causing an even worse epidemic. So I don't use any conventional wormers at all. And I practice totally happily without the use of any antibiotics, no chemical wormers, and definitely no vaccine. And I'm happy, and the animals are happy, the farmers are happy, the soil is happy, the soil livestock is happy. So that's my caveat with fear, is that it causes people to buy a whole lot of vaccine, a whole lot of antibiotics, and a whole lot of chemical warmers that are absolutely unnecessary.
Let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor today, 100th Meridian Ranching. My dad always said he wished there was a shot he could give bulls to make them take a 9-month nap. At 100th Meridian Ranching, they have something like that through their bull leasing program. Think about it. You could skip the bull sale, the risk of injured bulls, and the headache of year-round feeding, all while having access to bulls that fit your environment. They have over 500 to choose from in Black Angus, Red Angus, Charolais, and Hereford. This can improve your cash flow, grow your margins, and keep your operation flexible. The bulls are delivered right when you need them, so they aren't standing around eating unnecessary feed, tearing each other up, or your facilities. I leased a bull from them. They were great to work with and sent me a bull with genetics that didn't require a mixer wagon to stay fleshy. He truly was one of the most Bonsma-type bulls I've ever seen in person. Find 100th Meridian Ranching on Facebook or Instagram, visit 100thmeridianranching.com, or give Lane a call to find out more. Yeah, very good. I appreciate that. And a couple of things there I just want to follow up on before we get to Steve and talk to him about some of the other things you mentioned. Can you walk me through kind of the progress of an infestation? What are the early signs, first signs, and then how does it progress from there?
I'd rather talk about prevention.
Sure.
Yeah, years.
We can get there.
Yeah. But the worm does eat live flesh, and that's the key difference between a regular maggot. Maggots are actually used today in modern medicine on humans to clean out flesh wounds where there's gangrene or rotten flesh. That you can actually buy medicinal maggots. You put it in the wound. They eat nothing but dead flesh, and they stop at the border. So you end up with take a hose and flush it out, and you got beautiful, clean, pink, viable tissue. Whereas a screwworm thrives on live flesh. And in fact, when we get to treatment, one of the newer treatments, there's a spray that smells like live flesh, but it has a poison in it. So it will only draw in screwworm maggots, and actually the flies will lay their eggs in it because it smells like a wound. And it's one of the uh, modern pharmaceutical treatments for that. But what you're going to look at is a navel area that's scoured out, an area the size of a grapefruit, usually before you even see it. It's gone, absolutely gone. Same is true for a scrotal wound. I knife cut, castrate. I do not use the amateur version, which is banding. Um, and I have to add a caveat to most things I say. A good banding is better than a bad knife cutting. So you kind of have to watch a video or have a professional show you how to knife cut, but you'll never go back to a band because a band leaves gangrenous flesh. Everything south of the band is going to turn to gangrene, rotten tissue. I have photographs of scrotums that are the size of a basketball that were banded and they got infected. And, so anyway, that's what you're going to see. It happens really fast, overnight. And usually by the time a farmer or rancher sees screwworm damage, it's too late. They are already too far gone. That's how fast it happens. And they can infest even the tiniest little wound. They can get into a wound from a thorn or a barbed wire, or even this said, if they're bit by like a horse fly, they got a hole there from the fly bite. There's a little bit of juice that comes out of it, and the screwworm flies are attracted to it. It could actually get in that. That's very rare. We're talking about big wounds. So we have to I do it anyway. If I'm going to do a castration, first of all, I try to do it when there are no flies around. You don't want to castrate in fly season. I do not dehorn anymore, nor do I want to even see anybody doing it. But that would be the same thing. And when you're calving, which of course is the beginning of fly season for most people, or the end if they're fall calvers, you got to get in there right away and you got to get something on there. I have 5 or 6 different compounds that I use to spray on the area of the navel. I just used iodine teat dip. I've used that for 30, 40 years, and I find it's the absolute best thing. Iodine's good for them anyway. You can mix it with a little Vaseline if you want it to stick around longer and smear it on. But you can also buy wound treatments to smear on a fresh castration. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but like I say, there's very little warning time. You go from 0 to 100 really fast.
And all ages are susceptible, but younger and ones that have been through a castration or whatever, they're more susceptible. Is that true?
Funny you should say that because that leads to my big sermon on the mound of immune system, which we call the immune system. When the Flexner report came out in 1910 from the Rockefellers and the Carnegies, what they did is they eliminated 50% of all medical schools, and they eliminated any school that taught homeopathy, eclectic medicine, herbal medicine, anything good got ruled out because there's only one way to treat a disease, and that's with pharmaceuticals. And that was what those guys were into, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the Carnegies. They were supporting pharmaceutical industry. So their motto was one disease. Obviously, there's 1,000 kinds of diabetes, 1,000 kinds, but one disease, one treatment for it, and that was a drug. And they eliminated it was pharmacy versus physics. Physics meaning energy. The Chinese have been doing medicine for 5,000 years. We were still crawling around the cave when they came up with the medical system that's still accurate, still perfect, but that was all based on energy that's flowing through your meridians. So when cattle are in a feedlot or when dairy cattle are in a barn, a loafing shed where they get no ultraviolet light, no sunlight, they're on slatted floors, so they're not grounded, their energy goes down. So we're talking about energy, and that can be thrown off by shipping. Like you said, it can be thrown off by surgery, it can be stress. All of those things make you more vulnerable to parasites and pathogens. So absolutely, that's the best question of the whole day, Clay, what you just asked, is who gets it? It is not a healthy animal. Healthy animals don't get parasites and they don't get pathology.
Hmm.
And that health we call it an abbreviation, the immune system, but it goes into the energetics of the animal. We all have that with ourselves. You can tell when somebody's got like you look fantastic. You have energy. You just glow. It just radiates from you. Maybe it's a hat. I don't know, but you have energy, and that's what a real doctor would look at who evaluates you.
Yeah.
They don't train doctors on energy. The doctor is going to be looking at his lab results. He doesn't know what energy is, wasn't taught it. And it's all about what your lab tests are. Same is true of veterinarians. And unfortunately, same is true of ranchers. A good rancher can spot an animal whose ears are down, whose posture is down. They don't have to look for scours. They don't have to look for a cough. They can spot that energy. And that's why when I was in school, I was taught the 4 S's of sheep. 6 sheep seldom survive. And everybody that has sheep will tell you that. I get these calls all the time. It's like, I swear, doc, he was fine yesterday, and today he showed up dead. Well, he wasn't fine yesterday.
Mhm.
Couldn't see it because prey animals, which sheep and goats are, they are genetically trained to hide their symptoms of sickness because that's who gets picked off at the end of the pack by the wolves. So they look good, dead.
Mhm.
And it's hard for sheep farmers to know how to spot energy. If they pay attention to it, they won't lose sheep. They won't lose goats. And certainly with things like the screwworm, we talk prevention. Steve's the same way with genetics, with nutrition, and with management. Those are the three-legged stool of preventing this. So good ranchers, they don't have to worry about new worm, screwworm, new
I got
world.
one more question for you, Will, before we jump to Steve. Is do you are there areas of the country, northern latitudes, less exempt or more exempt, less vulnerable because of the winter and being colder and those things?
Absolutely. We have the two-sided sword of winter here in Minnesota, and where you are in South Dakota, we have a great eradicator of things. But guess what? Climate change is real, and South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, all of the northern states are starting to experience way more parasites and way more problems in plants and animals because the world is heating up. And we're having new diseases hitting my area that I never had to deal with. I grew up in Kansas where, we had more problems in that area because it was a more temperate area. But so that's good. But what's bad now is the drought that's hitting us, which is related to climate change. The drought is causing a lot of energetics in the loss of animal health. So
Yes,
drought.
certainly drier periods do seem to cycle through, and we've been experiencing one of those recently. I think the Ring of Fire has been the descriptor that some of the meteorologists have used to describe our last few months, and it seems to be a pretty widespread area. So yeah, definitely placing some stress on cattle.
You get more extremes. You get hotter weather, colder weather, windy, drier weather, wetter weather, floods.
Yeah.
You know, all these extremes. And again, I grew up in Kansas where we had a lot of ice storms there. We didn't have deep snow like Minnesota. We had fine, fine, fine ice storm.
Yeah.
And, I got pictures of animals that are coated with 2, 3 inches of ice, which will kill them. So yeah, those are all things that are factors in preventing disease. And
Sure.
I like to see people have shade for their animals. This heat deal is going to be a bigger and bigger problem. I love shade havens. I think those portable shade devices are worth I think you get within a year, you get your money back for a shade haven.
Mm.
I have people down in Texas who have handmade shade mobiles. Joel Saladin makes his own shade mobiles. They look like a portable junkyard. uh, Case, but they they give animals shade. I like Silva Spring for the same thing.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
pains me to see cattle out in the sun on a 110-degree day, and it's money right out of your pocket when you have animals. So the bovine animal functions best at about 45 degrees Fahrenheit. That's because they have this 55-gallon tank in their body that's fermenting their rumen, and that generates an enormous amount of heat. So, cold weather is not nearly as much of a problem. It can be a problem, but hot weather is money out of your pocket because when they're in the heat, they're going backwards many times. They're not gaining the number of average daily gain pounds that we like to see.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of those are factors, and it's all related. It's not just screwworm.
Yeah.
All these things we're talking about are related to every other parasite and every other pathogen. So yeah, and it's important that ranchers think big, think the big picture.
Yeah,
Not
that's why it's called holistic management, right? And we're looking at the whole, and we're trying to manage those holes in a way that we don't try to isolate one thing from another, right?
Yeah. Yeah, if you're just, using, just a rifle, just a pinpoint thing, it's like, "I am gonna fix this pink eye problem. I'm gonna fix this foot rot problem. I'm gonna fix this mastitis problem." You're not looking at the big picture.
Let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor today, Ranch Right. We've been telling you for years about the power of working with the team at Ranch Right to help you acquire actionable financials so you can build a profitable business and pass on generational wealth. Don't just take our word for it. Listen to some of these responses on a recent survey of Ranch Right's clientele. 97% of them said they understood their financials better as a result of working with Ranch Right. 91% said Ranch Right saves them time. And over again in the survey, these ranchers say the value of working with the team at Ranch Right is the team. Many of them remarked that the conversations with their Ranch Right team member helped them see the opportunities they had for business growth and success. They used words like eye-opening and helpful to describe the reports, saying that they had more clarity about the next step as a result of the product of Ranch Right's work. Head over to ranchrightllc.com today to book your discovery call and see how Ranch Right can speed up your path to profitability. Yeah, Steve, Will mentioned a couple of things there that I know you and I have talked a lot about over the years, and would like to give you an opportunity to share some of your perspective on the genetics side of this equation, and also the nutrition, or the we talked about this in the kind of lead up to this conversation, the alkalinity issue and some of those things. So we'll start with genetics and kind of your perspective there, and then we'll move on to the other issue of nutrition and some of those things.
On the genetic side, animals that are adapted to your zip code. Again, this year there were no Clydesdales in the Kentucky Derby. It's the wrong horse for the wrong course. So if you've got a cow that can survive in 2 acres for a cow to make a living, and you put her out where it takes 100 acres, she cannot eat and digest enough for 3. And you have the inverse of that, which you're probably not going to wind up with screwworms if you take that Western Wyoming cow and move her to Wisconsin. Different things, but alkaline versus acid. Mammals that have a neutral body pH, 6.6 to 7, tend to resist disease, external parasites. Will had talked about the weather and drier, the feed gets lignified. It's harder to digest the feed, the nutrients out of that feed. If the animal can digest the nutrients that are in the feed, those minerals are 90% bioavailable. If they're in just a mineral box in a inorganic form, they're only 20% bioavailable. You've got proteinated and chelated and other things. But in general, the more our animals are alkaline and have a big enough digestive vat, they can get more nutrition out of any feed that's out there. If you've got 100 cows and 3 of them have rough hair coats and the other 97 are shiny, just get rid of the 3. They're just not adapted to your environment. But if you've got 100 cows and there are only 3 that are shed out, you have a big epigenetic problem. There's either too many of the neighbor's toxins and or not enough minerals. And how do we address those two? Early on, Will was talking about what he saw in the 60s. I think one thing we have to add to the equation now, 60-some years later, is the neighbor's toxins blowing in on top of lack of minerals, whether we're not going to spend any money on a good mineral program or they're just not available to the animal. They're very poor at digestion. Will was talking about what happened there in England, and Mark Purdy was the one that pointed out what they had done with this organophosphate that created the BSE problem. And it wasn't very many years, and Mark Purdy was no longer alive. Just saying. But trying to address the mineralization and the detox, not trying to get into any particular product, but a client down in East Texas, they wanted to add minerals and detox their ground. And they got a mix that was, I think, half detox clay and half sea salt. And he said, I don't have enough to do the whole farm, what would you suggest I do? Well, one side of their farm was the county road. And then they had neighbors east, south, and west. And I said, well, just start on one side and go drive a U around the neighbor. And when you get to the county road, move in a little bit and drive another U. And when you get to the county road, move in a little bit. And so you're just move in as far as you can. And when you run out of this product, just stop. About a month and a half later, he heard that the neighbor on the back side, the south side, the army worms were hitting. So he went back to his fence line, and what he found was, yes, the neighbor's grass was just all eaten up, but the army worms had come in about 10 feet on his side of the property and then turned around and went back to the neighbor because those plants were healthy. Well, similarly, if we have healthy animals with few comorbidities, if you will, to use another term from 6 years ago, not 60, they're going to have more natural resistance to these problems. Prevention ahead of the fact really helps. And if you have a specific question, I have two more thoughts here, but is there something I said that brings up a specific question?
Let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor today, Austin Hart at Red Summit Advisors. At Red Summit Advisors, Austin Hart doesn't guess when it comes to structuring your PRF coverage. While most agents just run a handful of cookie-cutter options, Austin uses our proprietary software to analyze every grid, every coverage interval, every combination, so your policy fits your land, your rainfall history, and your operations goals. Red Summit makes PRF easy, so you can keep your family on the land. Call Austin Hart at 307-343-5670 today. Just a clarification, since there's potential for confusion with my name and the product, clay. Detoxification clay is a product, right? I mean, Redmond conditioner or whatever is what you're talking about there, right?
Yeah, conditioner, Desert Dynamin, ProMin, any of these sodium bentonite, zeolite type products. They're all a little different, but they're all generally the same. Different costs, different areas of the country, different efficacy, if you will. The shade, and I agree with Will about shade, but one reason that we need more shade today than we used to is the vast majority of mixed minerals out there. They might have a well thought out amount and variety of minerals, but to compete on price, they get the individual minerals out of China. And almost every mineral coming out of China or India now has cadmium in it. And the first thing cadmium does is screws up the cow's ability to regulate internal body temperature. They're too hot in the summer to rebreed, too cold in the winter and require more feed. If you've got cows that have a cadmium hump from the shoulder blades back to the hook bones, that's a classic cadmium toxicity look. If you see a herd that has that cadmium hump, they are ripe for the screwworm to come because they have a comorbidity. They're too hot. They're going to attract external, internal parasites.
Yep. And you said you had two more things. Was that the shade and
Well, Will, I guess it's kind of a question for you. The three areas to come in. One was the navel. If there's a deficiency of selenium, you wind up getting the navel cord broken off real close to the belly. When they're very well mineralized, a clean, mineral-rich interuterine environment. 3 weeks before any mammal gives birth, there's a mineral transfer from mom to junior. The cleaner and more complete that is, the better start in life the calf has, more energy, vigor, up moving. But the longer and larger in diameter that navel cord, which gives the screw, well, one, they're alkaline, but two, it's got the screwworm's got further to go up that navel cord to get into the meat of the animal. Will, what are your thoughts with what I was just saying?
I go back to my education. Like, say, I had this degree before I went to vet school, and my minor was in livestock nutrition. So I became a formulator. And in vet school, the topic of selenium, I don't know if it was ever mentioned in those 4 years, maybe in passing, but veterinarians are not taught nutrition, believe me. And there's a lot of misinformation in marketing. And I had a guy, it must have been 15 years ago. I've told you the story, who asked me what I thought what he was using as Billy Bob's mineral or something. I said, there's thousands of them. I don't know them all, but cut that label off and send it to me, and I'll give you a free professional evaluation. He did. Well, I looked at that, and it was like 42% salt. It certainly didn't have enough selenium or copper or zinc or iodine, any of those things. And I could tell by the way it was made, there's red flags to me, that it had Chinese and India junk in it. So I called this guy up and I said, "What do you like about this mineral?" And he said, "Well, it's $30 a bag," which to him meant it was cheap. And I was biting my tongue off because I could have made that exact mineral mix for less than $1 a bag. It was 42% white salt. And that was my tip off of how bad these mineral products are. And I still offer that service. To anybody listen to this, I'll do a free professional analysis of anybody's mineral. If they send me, they can do it by email now with photograph. I started doing this before cell phones were out there or had cameras. But if anybody sends me that, I like to hear what they pay for it and how it's working and how much that animals eat. But yeah, selenium is one of I call it the vaccine mineral because it's your immune mineral. Selenium and vitamin E are related to the immune system. So it's a factor for more than just the length of the cord. It's just every cell in that calf's body is going to be impacted by the selenium. What if they get it?
Will, if I may, Richard Ulrey, Minerals for the Genetic Code. The very first thing that selenium is going to do in a mammal's body is keep it alive today. It's going to detoxify lead, mercury, and cadmium.
Mhm.
And then there's got to be some left over for that immune function. So it's going to keep you alive today, and then it's going to worry about tomorrow and next week and next year.
Selenium is also a negatively charged ion, and just like so many soils, farmers will say, "Oh, I was told my soil doesn't have enough selenium." Yeah, you're right. Nobody's does because the soil colloid is negatively charged and they repel each other. So selenium is going to, just like iodine, is going to flush out of your soil. And one of the biggest myths is that the soil in actuality, never had enough selenium, copper, zinc, or iodine in it anywhere, and that's why buffalo migrated and elk and various animals because it was never in the soil. Then you add another 100 to 150 years of mining the topsoil with livestock or crops, and even though it was never in there, it's way less. So animals, whether they get it out of a bag or out of the soil, it's not optional. They have to have these minerals. And selenium, to me, is the four big ones are selenium, copper, zinc, and iodine. You can use selenium-methionine, which is the natural force. You can use selenium is sodium selenite, and all of those forms will work, but they have to have it. And I like to use about 120 parts per million of selenium in my mineral mix. And I don't expect farmers or ranchers to be mineral experts or nutritionists. They're not trained in it. And it took me 10, 15 years and a college degree in nutrition to learn anything. And you don't have time. If you're a rancher, you got a million fires to put out. So you have to find somebody that you can trust, that can give you, good advice. But I will tell you one thing, just like that guy that had a $30 bag that was worth $1, Cheap minerals are expensive. You're going to be buying a lot of vaccine. You're going to have pink eye. You're going to have foot rot. You're going to have infertility. And you know how that works, Steve, with nutrition is that an under-mineralized animal, not only are they vulnerable to screwworm and other parasites and pathogens, they're not fertile and they're just not going to do good for you. So that's, to me, not an optional aspect of animal husbandry is you got to have good forages, good clean land, and the proper supplement that will get them healthy again.
So the closer you are to danger, the screwworm area, the more you need to pay attention. And if there was ever a year that you wanted to decide to spend a little more on prevention, this would be the year. And as Will says, buy a good mineral this year. You want to run an experiment on your farm? Give one herd the normal mineral you're doing, buy a good mineral for the other herd, and see which one gets more screwworm. Or just go ahead and try to prevent it.
Yeah, I don't want to, as expensive as cattle are, I don't want to sacrifice any of them.
Bingo. As expensive as cattle are right now, can you afford not to prevent screwworm?
It's cruel too, like let's keep them healthy. I mean, this is a sacred occupation we're all involved in is raising food for people and caring for God's earth. And to be a cheapskate, go be a stockbroker or something. Don't raise living things if you're a cheapskate. I wish you could just magically make things happen, but I really like to see people that care for the earth, care for the plants, care for the animals and their children and their family. That's what makes me happy. And we're lucky. Steve, you and I work with the cream of the crop. The people you and I meet every day, we are these loving people that you and I meet that care. Or as Will Harris says, it's the art of giving it. And he's got a book called The Art of Giving It. Will Harris is a brilliant man. And that book, to me, that says it all. The art of giving it about whatever you're doing. Do a good job at it. Don't be half.
Yeah. And so would there be other things that either of you would say about prevention? We talked about, I think, healthy pasture, genetically adapted livestock, good quality mineral supplements. Are there other things that you would say, Will, along those lines, and Steve?
Clay, you're asking the right questions because one of the biggest problems on farms today is, and this is one where drought actually helps prevent it, is mold contamination, moldy feed, moldy hay, moldy silage. Mold aflatoxins, for one, they can kill you. If it's certain kinds of aflatoxins are deadly. But here in the Midwest where you live, Clay, where I live, we have a mold called Fusarium. And Jerry Bernetti called it the stealth mold. And because what it does, it doesn't kill you outright. What it does, it gives you essentially AIDS. You have no immune system. So your cattle have got pink eye, they got foot rot, they're getting mastitis, your somatic cell counts are to the moon. And if you don't get rid of that mold, you are going to be fighting disease constantly. And that would include screwworms because mold gives you AIDS. And it's a ubiquitous problem. I work with people. Used to back when it rained, we had problems with moldy hay where you could make it rain by cutting hay, and then it's sitting there on the ground for 2 days. Then you're rolling it up, and when you open those big rounds, there's this white powder that comes off. You certainly don't want to breathe that, by the way. But that white powder is usually Fusarium mold, and that's one of the nastiest stealth molds. It's not like Aspergillus, which is a deadly aflatoxin mold, but the fusarium is bad. So that like I say, I'm glad you asked that question, because if people are buying raunchy hay that has gotten moldy, they're shooting themselves in the foot. It takes a whole lot to overcompensate that, or overdo it. And there's two tools we use to compensate that specifically. One is apple cider vinegar, is a mold toxin antidote. And the other one is your name, are the detox clays. And one of the biggest things detox clays detoxify is mold mycotoxins. And it's huge. It's one of those topics we should have started talking about, because that is going to cripple you unless you know how to prevent and minimize and detoxify mold. So yeah, I could talk about obviously can talk about it a lot, but I see it every day. People feeding moldy hay.
Yeah.
I had a woman at an Organic Valley conference raise her hand when I was lecturing, and she said, "My silage has white mold in it. Do you think it's safe to feed that?" And I said, "Well, ma'am, I would have it analyzed, because it's real easy to have a hay sample or silage sample analyzed." She said, "Well, I did, and it had mold in it." And I said, "Well, if it does, I would," and I mentioned vinegar and clay, and she said, I'm sorry, I asked my question backwards." She said, "I am giving them detox clay, and my dairy cows are eating a pound of clay a day."
Whoa.
What does that tell you?
Yeah. Yeah. They know they need it.
And
Yeah,
they were,
Steve, go ahead. Sorry, Will. I'll let you finish.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve. You were
Well, thinking about the screwworm with what we're talking about here, they're going to go after the weaker animals first, if you will. The Cliff and Norm story about the wolves and the buffalo on Cheers, but won't go into that. Anyway, I
Sure.
was in South Dakota at the 1st of August a couple of years ago, and the rancher, one of the best ranchers I know, he'd gone out in the morning to check his cattle, and everything was just fine. They had a few flies, nothing really bad. I got there about an hour before they got back from Belfouche, and anyway, he's talking, we're talking, he's looking over my shoulder, and I go, what are you looking at out there? And he goes, it was half or 3/4 a mile. He says, I think those cattle are in the wrong pasture. And there were 225 or 50 pair out there. And yeah, they'd broken a high tensile wire. And I have never seen a herd of cattle in so much distress in my life. The flies had hit really, really hard that day, before or after 7 in the morning, before 4 in the afternoon. We went back, we got 4 of these 8-foot long metal frame, plastic lined feeders, and we put 50 pounds of sodium bicarbonate, 50 pounds of clay, and 50 pounds of dry molasses in there, and in each one of these things. And over the course of the next 2 days, per pair, they consumed 7 ounces of clay a day and 7 ounces of sodium bicarbonate per day, almost a pound of each over the course of 2 days. But 36 hours after he put it out there, the flies left his cattle, went over the fence to the neighbor's yearlings, who are now running with their tails in the air. But we got his animals alkaline quick enough that they were no longer a good house for bugs, screwworms. I thought he was going to have a pink eye disaster, doctrine pink eye, until September. We got rid of the stress. Will was mentioning weather stress, lignified grass, minerals tied up. That we got rid of the stress so fast he did not get one case of pink eye.
Hmm.
This was not prevention, but we showed up quick enough with the cure that it just stopped it in its tracks.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. I think of something often that we call it disease, and that's how we pronounce it. But if you break it down, it's dis-ease, right? And these animals are stressed. These animals are they don't have everything they need to thrive. They're lacking in minerals, something like that. And so I think that's sometimes a helpful way to think about it, because if we can put them at ease, if we can get them to a place where they are at ease, then sometimes they will be less vulnerable, or oftentimes they will be less vulnerable to dis-ease. Would you gentlemen agree with that?
And you don't need the pharmaceuticals to get there either. And that's the best way to do it. Clay, you've seen this too, where you'll have a herd of animals and one horse or one cow have 1,000 flies on it, standing right next to an identical looking animal with 10 flies.
Yep.
There's your immune system. And I've mentioned this a lot, but all parasites have antennae. Flies have two little antennae. And they're not for cable TV. They're for feeling the energy of hosts, and they will fly to the animal that's sending out that signal. And when we fix the signal, which is what Steve did, they're not drawn to them anymore. And so that's all you're doing, really. You're actually working on you might say, the electronics or the electricity or the energetic patterns of the animals or of yourself, to not attract death.
Yep.
Bugs are Mother Nature's cleaning crew.
Yeah.
They're out there cleaning up, eating what's not fit for man nor beast. You've got 3 bricks grass. You got a lot of bugs, a crop, whatever. We're using chemical warfare agents to kill them, and you get 12 bricks. Now the mineral content is high enough. The bugs know to stay away because they don't have the equivalent of our liver. That sugar turns to alcohol. They would die. Very similarly, if we get the pH of the animals high enough,
Mhm.
the bugs stay away. So yes, the all of these clays raise pH, detox, minerals, promote the growth of the biology in the gut. But at times like these, I would want to keep sodium bicarbonate out there as well, just in case they couldn't get enough of the clay to do the job. If they have that extra alkaline forming force in the field, at least they can bridge the gap from today till next week when everything else starts to kick in that you've started to put out there.
If I would add something you would say too is that apple cider vinegar, even though it's an acid, is alkalizing, which it seems like an oxymoron, but we know that a big part of why vinegar-consuming animals don't have as many parasites, don't have as much disease, is that this helps get them alkaline.
And all apple cider vinegars have that side of the equation. The vinegar from Idaho, they start with whole apples and make sure they don't kill any of the enzymes. Those intact enzymes help the animals digest more of the minerals that are in the plant that are 90% bioavailable.
Mm-hmm.
They're not having to go to the mineral box and get the 20% bioavailable. They can get it right out of that plant if it is in that plant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I really appreciate that. I had a conversation the other day with a guy who's gone to feeding apple cider vinegar regularly, and he's right on an irrigation ditch, and so all those toxins are coming past his place. And he said we used to deal with all kinds of diseases, coccidiosis and a host of others. And he said since we started feeding apple cider vinegar, we have dealt with zero issues related to some of those things coming down the ditch. So that was a good testimonial. I appreciate both you guys and your time today. Do you have any last words? We'll start with Steve as far as the issue, this issue, or other things kind of related to it that you'd like to say before we let you go.
I guess I'd just like to go back to, there are some cows that have in utero. I mean, Fred Provenza nourishment, but in utero, clean and mineral rich. They're more suited. They're just going to get more out of life than an animal that just didn't get it in utero or at mom's side. But animals that, even if they couldn't stay alkaline on their own, if they were given enough tools where they could get and stay alkaline, they can ward off this screwworm problem way better than animals that you never feed anything. Hey, if one can do it, they all should be able to do it. You're going to have a large culling profit loss if you don't get ahead of the curve here. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Will?
I hear it all the time as I'd like to give vinegar to my cattle, I can't afford it. Or I'd like to give minerals, but I can't afford it. They look at it as a liability when actually those people that are giving it, they make money. Our star performer at Thousand Hills Cattle Company is a guy in New York that raises Murray Grade cattle, and he finishes cattle to high choice, or I'm sorry, high select, low choice at, catch this, hold on to your hat, 16 months. They're ready to go to town. 16 months. And he's a big advocate of minerals, big advocate of vinegar. He wouldn't be able to do it without vinegar. But he has 12 to 16 bricks grass, which is the key. It's the candy grass. But these cattle do not have parasites. He's never used a wormer. He's tested negative on all his fecal flotation tests. He doesn't have flies. And so he's a guy that can't afford not to give it. And that's what I tell people. You can't afford not to give vinegar. You can't afford not to give minerals. And you can't afford to buy cheap animals. So again, it's all about what you're willing to put in the front end as to what you're going to get as your take-home pay.
And the three of us at different times separately have talked about all these things in more depth, about apple cider vinegar, about remineralizing cattle, about quality genetics. And so I'll throw that up in the show notes page for today, workingcows.net/328. You can find all those episodes that we've talked about these things in the past linked there. I'll also put in there, I'll get to Steve in a second. I'll also put in there an episode with Joel Salatin where he talked about all the things they're not doing. But he said, it's not like we're sitting on our hands. And then he talked about all the things they're doing, from these perspectives as far as, good quality minerals that help those cattle thrive, to make them a bad home for bugs and those things. Steve, do you have something else you wanted to add there?
You said 3, but I think you meant episode 5.
Oh, 5. Yeah. I've been doing that for some reason. 528 episode, workingcows.net/528. Yes. I've like 3 times in this last week, I've just transported myself back 200 episodes for some reason.
Okay. I wanted to mention an Amish guy, Herb Miller in Wisconsin, who has an herbal fly repellent for immediate, instant knockdown, 100% knockdown, and it lasts 7 to 10 days. It's called Dermachen, which is German for fly, but it's a herbal fly spray. Herb Miller at Turtle Creek Nutrition. That is for an instant knockdown. You can put it on oilers, or let them self-medicate. But that'll give people put their mind at rest so their animals can on day one not have any flies, screwworm or other, and not have any poisons in them.
What the heck? We'll throw that in the show notes page too. I've got a phone number where your friends in the plane community, the Amish and others who aren't listening to podcasts on their smartphones, they can call and listen to podcasts. So I'll put that number in the show notes page. If you have any friends in those communities, you can share that number with them and they can go and listen. So there you go.
They're hungry.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing the amount of traction that phone number gets. But Will, Steve, thank you guys for your time today.
You're doing a great job, Clay. We love your service and what you've contributed to our community.
Thank you very much, Clay. And God bless you and all you do.
Thank you. Very good stuff there with Steve and Will, as always, of course. Really appreciate their wisdom, the years that they've been dealing with these things, and kind of the breadth of their experience over the nation, and getting to see on the ground results in a lot of cases of dealing with these issues of parasites and other things through natural means. And so it's just really exciting to me to see those things and to hear about the options. And I hope it's a blessing and a help to many of you. Talked to Steve after the episode, and he said if the episode helps a few people, whatever that number is, it was worth it. Just really appreciate their heart and their desire to help people get through these things. Coming up next on the Working Cows podcast, we're going to talk to Zach Hobson from the Ranch Rolodex podcast. We're going to talk to him about kind of his start in agriculture and the way that he has gone about developing an entrepreneurial, multiple streams of income kind of fleet, cadre of businesses, and some of those things. So look forward to sharing that with you, coming your way real soon on another episode of the Working Cows podcast. We'll see you then.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.